next one. Brainwash so you trust the authority. They want you to think you're the minority. Don't stoke the flame superiority. They'll come to see the Fefe majority.
Okay, we are live this afternoon, May 7th, 2024. That's full red pill shell scanner. Phones are officially open, so if you have any concerns, questions, comments, constructive feedback, you may call in at any time. 505-349-0420. I haven't updated the archives in the last couple of days, but that's because I've been busy working on side projects, such as the QAnon documentary, the legal case versus Q/Google, which thankfully has been pushed back 2 months. I have more time to prepare, and other ways of keeping this tank moving forward. Specifically eBay, I've been really focusing on building that out because even though I'm mostly selling art right now, and as you can see on my page, I've moved over 1,000 original artworks in the last year and a half, but that's going to be one of the primary distribution centers for the publications. So I have to make sure that we have a good open channel there with 100% positive feedback, and we certainly have that ready to go. So things are looking really good. Plus we have monetized channels. We have a good number of members on the IPS YouTube channel, which I'm going to be using more and more as we go forward, as that is specifically uploading videos targeting members for their comments and links and whatever else they want to say first. All right, we're joined by Michael Jewell, Ted Stryker, Joe Impera, Linda Curtis, Watchdog. Okay, we have a few rolling in. We started earlier again. Let's go ahead and catch up on a few things. I was out this morning at the gardens here. They have this botanical gardens, but they have this section, they call it the some kind of an exhibit with bugs. It's the word is bugs, bugarium or something. But anyway, I was looking at these exceedingly large insects and a wide array of like stick bugs, and then these death heads roaches, which have like little demon masks on their back, like emojis, and a number of species of diving beetles, like little submarines. But the ant exhibit wasn't up, which is a pretty neat thing to see from what I hear, where they're crawling on these sticks along the ceiling. But I just got back. I'm going to upload some pictures, although I was just starting to upload video from my recent excursion, and I was blocked on Twitter. So for the next 12 hours, I cannot tweet. And I don't know if I deserve this or not. Maybe I'm not taking things seriously enough. But here's what got me banned. So Being had said, I would rather die fighting for what is right than live passively amidst all that is wrong. And amidst is misspelled. So this person is basically saying, I want to die for the right cause instead of living passively. And I'm tired of people not taking action on things they believe in. You see, I'm an inactivist because I don't believe in anything. If I believed in half the crap that a lot of truthers believed in, I would be active. So I'm suggesting to this person, well, have you considered self-immolation? Maxwell Azrello is hashtagged there. So I just kind of politely suggested self-immolation might be a way to fight the system and die for what you believe in or whatever you want to do. And I thought this was a friendly, constructive comment. This wasn't like a threat or anything like that. Well, within 5 seconds, they said, remove the tweet. This is against our violent speech. Remove the content and other edited versions of this tweet, and do not appeal this violation, and this tweet will not be available, and then you can post again in 14 days or something. And then afterward, I got the message that I had 12 hours to wait since I agreed. So they kind of extorted me. I feel extorted, like I was kind of forced to go against my own free speech inclinations on behalf of someone who was asking for constructive commentary. And isn't that the path these days? I mean, personally, I think it's a terrible marketing strategy. Self-immolation. Like, it doesn't work. This is the distraction, the age of distraction, the attention economy. If you set yourself on fire for anything or do any kind of self-harm, the most you're going to do is you're going to get a headline for a day or two. But we're at a point where they could nuke Seattle on Tuesday, and by Friday we'll be talking about Drake and his beef with Kendrick Lamar. So it's wasted, is what I'm saying. A drop in the ocean. It might have been a formidable move 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Like you could get crucified and in 3 days come back from the dead, and you won't be the top trending person on TikTok. Not in 2024. Joined by Zin Bellis, Uncool Ben, Project Honda Rod, Let's Go, Armin Reed, this is where it's at. So, did you hear about the fake pandas? Oh, come on. Now, this is just going to lend credence to the fake panda people. And I want to point out one thing before I even go to that link. People who suggest that pandas are fake, or people who believe in, well, rather, people who don't believe in exotic animals, like, oh, exotic animals don't exist. Anything outside of what I've experienced in my limited lifetime doesn't exist. That's their rationale. And they're not drawing their conclusion from all of the information that's available, but from rather a selected video or two that some panda denier is putting forth. It's a game. It's a troll. It's not a legitimate truth or pursuit. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not even a conspiracy theory. You don't have to debunk fake pandas. You have to bunk that pandas don't exist. And the case has not been made that pandas do not exist, except again, within that narrow range of people who are just going to go off what they've seen on YouTube. And you will never see a panda denialist go to a zoo and talk to a zookeeper or hug a panda, which would get you killed. They will bite your feet off. Like these things are savage. But you won't see anyone go through with it. I've seen people say, hey, that sun bear is a man in a costume waving at people. I think it's like 3 feet tall. I mean, it's not a big bear. But from one particular angle, one particular clip, it looked like a human in a bear suit. But immediately after, when it ran down to the bottom where it could feed, it was obviously not a human. So again, it has to do with the curation of your reality. Now, look at this as a microcosm. If somebody curates your reality and says, hey, look, pandas are fake, look at this video and listen to this argument. Now, that person has a monopoly on your interpretation of pandas because you're not looking outside of that. Well, you're now a panda denialist. That's the rig. That's the rigged game. Now, consider how this is, again, a microcosm for mass media. What does mass media do every day? It provides a tunnel vision view of reality. And what is outside of its view still exists. Pandas still exist, even if you don't believe in them. And there is a world outside of the world stage presentation that a lot of people simply don't believe in. They discount it. It's really strange at this point how people can be so blatantly in denial of the existence of, like, for example, special effects. Apparently, one of the things about outer space is where things get pixelated when you move too fast. And things like microphones can go through your neck and it won't draw blood. Interesting environments. Or it could be special effects. Zoo goers outraged to discover panda exhibit was actually dogs dyed black and white. Okay, this has got to be some kind of a joke. A zoo in China sparked pandemonium after they dressed dogs as pandas because they didn't have the genuine artifact. Now, there's got to be some other reason for this, because these are panda dogs. This is some kind of a... Okay, this attracts throngs of people despite the obvious bamboozlement. Well, at least they're not eating them. I don't know what to say about it. I have to investigate it. It doesn't mean anything as far as whether or not pandas exist. Unbelievable. Okay, let's see. This is where it's at. It says Drake and Kendrick Lamar have the same agent. I think mainstream rappers are agent. That's a great point. This is another point too about you fake your, rather, I'm sorry, you incinerate yourself. Nobody remembers you next week. Now, if Kendrick Lamar was fake deaded and it's pointing at Drake, guess what? It's not going to be talked about in a month. He'll have thrown away his career for a fake death. The attention span for a martyr like that just isn't around anymore. I don't think there's going to be another Tupac. Tupac was martyred at a time when we didn't have all this glut of information and all this competition, and so it was able to really percolate, sort of like Jesus. These myths take time to settle and spread, and today, if you're trying to create a myth or a legend in today's environment, I'm just saying, you got to do something that's sustainable. And I think this kind of beef back and forth is far more sustainable than a sudden act of violence. Maybe times have changed. Like maybe they're going to only character assassinate Trump. Maybe things have changed like that. This is where it's at. It says crisis actor dog pandas. Weren't there some crisis acting horses too? All kinds of various species are getting in on the axe. But the fact they have the same agent is telling. Again, fake deaths are out. Getting swatted is in among the right. And there's something else that I'm seeing on the right as well. Getting swatted was a big thing. But crying censorship used to be a tactic, and it would effectively build an audience. But it became somewhat self-defeating, and now they're all coming back to X. Nick Fuentes is back on X. And his fans have a short attention span. Like, they don't have a long memory, rather, I should say. They have a short memory. Because, yeah, they laugh everything off. It's all a joke. Everything's a joke. It's like, okay, fine, it's a joke. It's a joke that he said that little girls need to be groomed to get married to white racists when they're 16 so that they can combat white genocide, and that they shouldn't vote, or that women are like Nick Fuentes was talking about how hot Donald Trump is because in his view men age like wine. And Nick Fuentes again is a self-admitted celibate. He's a volcel, not incel. He's not involuntary. He's a voluntary celibate. And that's all a huge lie as well. I want to point out, huge lie. Not only is he not any of the things that he pretends to be, but if you look at his associates, people like Ollie Alexander, it's clearly a blackmail circle of people who are just pretending to be Christian conservatives, etc. But one of the archetypes they presented is the holy warrior, like the American jihadi, the MAGA jihadi. That's where the incel comes in. They're celibate holy warriors. Look at Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate has made the point that if you enjoy having any kind of sexual activity, you are therefore in error. That all sex is gay. That's Nick Fuentes. That's Andrew Tate. Where do they get this from? Well, this is from some kind of new notion of what masculinity is and what your purpose should be if you're a man. And they're having this right wing echo chamber define it. And it's a hideous caricature, and it's just as hideous as Barbie feminism. I don't know what we're going to call it. It's the reaction against the Ken dollification, but it goes kind of far in the other direction. But Nick Fuentes back on Twitter, we'll see where that goes. I've been kind of following along with this. I just think people are too forgiving when it comes to these propaganda spigots who claim to be comedians or claim to be using memes and irony when their messaging is actually very consistent. So you can't say, oh, I'm just joking because I'm smirking when I said it. No, that's kind of a weak way of not taking accountability for what you're saying. And I get this a lot. That's why I don't respect dog whistles. If I hear somebody dog whistling, it's like, oh, you're not really going to stand up for what you believe in. Bye. Same thing with people who are complaining about cirrus clouds from airplanes, and they're like, chemtrails, I'm angry about it. Well, do something. If you're going to complain about it and you're not going to be an activist, then what are you at this point? This is where it's at, says Nick Who. Look, I don't want to minimize the guy. You may not know who he is, but he is the top of the white nationalist hierarchy when it comes to the alt-right, when it comes to ideology. He's the one who really tapped into the youth and the online culture. And beyond that, he is friends with Ye. He was Ye's campaign manager, and he went with Ye to Trump's palace there in Mar-a-Lago and had dinner with him. So, like, he's not a nobody. Like, people say, why do you call the elite elite? Well, because they are, and they think you're bugs. No, but it's because you have to call things by their right names. It's the beginning of wisdom, is to call things by their right names. And the power elite are in a position of superiority, whether you like it or not. They know more than all the NPC believers running around in their solipsistic Truman shows. This is just how the asylum is run. We have to get real about it. Cunife said, I sell chemtrail pods that protect from chemtrail fallout. Oh, I saw that meme. That's what that was. Okay. It's like a clear vinyl box that you wear when you're out in public, so you can be protected from chemtrail fallout, but you don't have to wear a mask. Because I realized this. I was trying to sell masks to chemtrail boofers, and they're like, we're not going to wear masks. We're anti-mask. Okay, well, you're anti-mask for COVID. So I put for chemtrails, not COVID, on the mask. Nobody bought it. Nobody's going to wear a chemtrail mask. So then I see Cunife comes out with these chemtrail fallout pods, kind of like the pods that the order takers at Chick-fil-A were wearing in 2020. And it's like, that's genius. It really is. People ought to have like a vinyl, kind of like a hallway or a ceiling that goes from the front door to their car so they can just not be exposed to the sky at all. At no point throughout your day, if you believe in chemtrails, should you be able to look up and see the sky. You should always be protected. Umbrellas, your cars, or get some kind of a pod. Even a mask isn't enough. You don't think that chemtrails can come in through your eyes and your ears and your nose and your skin? Probably sticks in your hair. You might want to shave your head and just wear full body PPE at all times. How do they live? You should really be in a bunker by now. If you if you really knew what they were spraying, you would be in your bunker right now. You wouldn't let your children out of the house without a gas mask. We are living in fallout, but the sheeple don't want to admit it. So they're running around, killing themselves, getting chemtrail lung. It's going to depopulate the entirety of humankind. The elite apparently don't care about killing their own either. They must have some safe space where they don't spray. But yeah, there's not going to be a future unless you get into your chemtrail pods. All right, let's move on. I want to get caught up on a few things. Yeah, I'm banned on Twitter, so that's probably a good thing. This is posted in our Discord server by Violet. After years of delay, Boeing trying to win with Starliner space capsule. Boeing's Starliner spacecraft designed to fly astronauts to orbit, a $4.2 billion contract. See, there's another example of a conspicuous 42 not connected to Elon Musk. Bezos does it too. There are 3,300 inactive satellites aimlessly orbiting as space junk. Do you know where the dead satellites are supposed to go? And this is all just narrative. This is all story. Point Nemo. You know where 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea happens? Point Nemo. Point Nemo is the most remote location from human habitation on the globe, if you believe in that. And this is where not only do we have the spacecraft cemetery, where NASA drops their satellites. So you have the satellites, lights from the sky falling down, they end up here. But this is where Jules Verne has his story take place. And Jules Verne is really one of the, I think, predecessors to the idea of going to the moon. He's one of the first ones to bring it up. I think later it was picked up probably by von Braun. And in fact, it was Pete Shea said that there's a continuation between Jules Verne and Werner von Braun that I need to look into with this story of going to the moon. But it's interesting. Jules Verne, and this is where satellites are dropped. Now, thirdly, this is where H.P. Lovecraft says the elder gods fell to the earth and landed, and they have a city, R'lyeh, city of the dead. So you have this basically a dead city beneath the sea where the Kraken sleeps and where NASA's dropping satellites like dead angels. Kind of an interesting concept, and you throw it all together. But anyway, I'm looking at this story with Boeing because Boeing has been pointed at for its plane parts falling out of the sky, etc. And I'm thinking this has to be connected. In other words, maybe they're preparing for their space disaster. Now that we have it in our heads that Boeing is going cheap on the parts, skimming off the top, and maybe it's going to put this entire space program in jeopardy. Greg R says, wouldn't a chemtrail pod require its own ventilation and air scrubber apparatus? Yeah, you're going to need a bunch of bubble costumes like Bubble Boy. You're going to have the whole thing. We got to be safe. Armin Reese says, isn't fallout a separation after an argument? Interesting description. Yeah, it definitely is. We're having a falling out. And the bunker thing is intriguing too if you think about how every single psyop is all about safety, sacrificing freedom for security, and maximum security, lockdown. This is all prison terminology, and they're conditioning us to see the world as so dangerous that we must opt in to maximum security at all times in this panopticon. And pre-2020, you were a top tier truther if you had already acquired a bunker, if you've gone off the grid, if you have your storable food items. So it's kind of interesting that truthers for years had been preparing to survive in lockdown. And then 2020 rolls around and they don't want to lock down. No, they want to march around City Hall. It's like, you guys are the ones at the bunkers. You're the ones ready to ride this out. And now you're going to resist? There's a point where you can see contrarianism is really more about, I think more of trutherism is contrarianism than perhaps even a legitimate search for the truth. And speaking of seeking or searching for the truth, the word research has been condemned by the media. They hate the word truth, so they turned truther into a bad thing, which is kind of funny. Because what is truther? But the opposite of a liar. I'm like, oh, the truthers are coming. Yeah, it's because you're liars. Doesn't mean the truthers are closer to the truth, but you get it. But the term researchers, independent researchers, has been consistently demonized. Maxwell Asrello was a quote, independent researcher. And of course, that means that you have questions. And if you have questions, then it means you're not listening to their answers, which means you're a thought criminal. Duos in Paris says, Vanilla Sky gave a nod to Jules Verne's. Oh, interesting point there. They did. In fact, that's very interesting. Vanilla Sky follows Eyes Wide Shut. You can almost look at them as continuous. There's an actual storyline that I've picked up on. And I want to probably put an article out about this because it's consistent. But Eyes Wide Shut, you had Tom Cruise hanging out with the moon landing faker himself, Kubrick. And so we're talking about the moon landing, and Jules Verne's one of these characters who kind of builds into it. But in Vanilla Sky, they're talking about life extension, LE. And when they talk about this, they kind of scoff, and the woman who sells it to him says, well, they laughed at Jules Verne's too. And you'll notice she has red hair. She looks kind of Bowie-esque, the actress in Vanilla Sky with the red head. Very significant role. The woman in the red hair who initiates him into the afterlife. It's meant to correlate with the Magdalene, represented by Sophia. And of course, David Ames dies at 33, resurrected after a 3-day funeral. It's all about the Gnostic Christ and the reinsertion into the material realm. So that's kind of what the movie's about. If you haven't seen Vanilla Sky, I would watch it for the Gnostic undertones. And the soundtrack and everything. It all aligns perfectly. Armin Ree says, Tim, another connection with Donnie Darko, planes falling apart. Donnie Darko came out on 1/19, 2001. So 1/19. And they had to alter some of the marketing materials because they so ominously predicted 9/11. And it was kind of a culty film at the time. The director's father works for NASA. He did the Mars Viking project. You'll find a lot of this interesting stuff here. Donnie Darko and 9/11, Too Many Coincidences. And of course, the marketing materials had to be kind of changed because it had plane parts falling from the sky. There's a second part I need to watch. Someone said I need to watch the expanded edition. The director is Richard Kelly. Again, Richard Kelly's father worked for NASA's Viking program. So you're like, wait, NASA and 9/11? What's the connection here? Well, again, same production company. The same people who faked Apollo 11 faked 9/11. Kubrick happened to be a major name in this, but not the only name. We can look at many authors, writers, and directors who all equally contributed. In fact, I think there's some interesting development here coming up with this Francis Ford Coppola film called Megaopolis, and it's coming out this year, I believe. Now, this is one of his passion projects. He dumped a lot of his own money into it, but this was written before 9/11, and they took out a scene because it was so reminiscent of 9/11, and then he shelved it. Now it comes out, so I'm thinking that's interesting. What's the significance here? Now, what's more, this movie Megaopolis, which I think might be a reference to Babylon and the Tower of Babel, and the reason I'm saying so is it has a reference to a Russian satellite falling to Earth. And I'm thinking, wait, this might tie in to the movie ISS, which, like Donnie Darko, came out on 119. And it has this fight between Russia and America in space. So I'm thinking, okay, so Megaopolis, Russian satellites, 9/11, 9/11 predictive programming was put into the film, or would have been in the film. It makes me think something's going on here. Let me go through your comments. Again, phones are open. If you want to call in, I want to watch the trailer for Megaopolis. I'll probably go watch this and review it, but the main thing I'm thinking here is that he admitted that it had a scene that had to be changed because it was too close to the attack on September the 11th. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Very good.
Wondering, when do you think, with all this programming, when will we start seeing the planes falling out of the sky?
Well, it kind of started. If you look from the date that Leave the World Behind started to the present, we've had multiple stories: burning planes, doors opening, hatches opening, crash landings, and this was very consistently referencing in every of these news articles. People are comparing it to Leave the World Behind. So it's already started, but it hasn't reached a crescendo, or they haven't really hyped it up yet, but I think it's building there. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's getting there, right? I mean, it's kind of like the don't look into things, don't look up. It's like it's like with Azarello, with Max. It seems like, to me, that was meant to sort of make research unpopular, like you said, and a lot of the don't look up terminology, don't look into things, don't associate all the obviously available data with incriminating the L-ites or the elites. Anyone who does that is just like crazy folks who light themselves on fire.
Yeah, that's definitely a smear campaign. Now, as far as when the planes fall, anything they're going to do is going to be preceded by mass entertainment. So when Moonfall came out, directed by the guy who did ID4, Independence Day, Roland Emmerich. Well, that movie was a major reference point for 9/11 predictive programming. People are like, oh, it's just like Independence Day. So I thought, this guy comes out with Moonfall, which has stuff falling from the sky. So I'm not sure if they're going to pull planes down, but I think that when the Tower of Babel falls, it's going to be satellites. It's going to be the space station. There's going to be some kind of war up above where stuff falls in a very spectacular way, but ultimately theater. That's kind of how I think they're going to do it. It may not actually be planes.
Yeah, I think I'm with you 100%, and I hate to admit it, but I think the satellites are the biggest psyop when it comes to, all of this, like NASA in general. I'm a horrible person in the fact that, due to a research property I'm involved with called Space Wolf Research, which shares a fence line with Skinwalker Ranch, I was able to get on a Tech Flights NASA pre-solicitation group. And, I listen into these meetings and become a part of them, and I'm totally, not on their side, but I listen in to kind of be part of the group. And all of these satellites, I mean, all they talk about when it comes to lenses, not to throw them under the bus, but I will, it's GoPros, for low orbit space launches. And they're using GoPros with all these flight opportunities and announcing how, they're looking for better space technologies. And what they're really talking about is covers for these GoPros and trying to, push that that lens curvature. But it's all GoPros. Everything for low orbit space launches, all they utilize, Tim, is GoPros.
Well, we will never see a flat horizon. When that Red Bull jumper Felix Baumgarten did his stunt, it looked like he was in space looking down at the Earth, and I believed it when I saw it. I was like, oh, this guy's on the edge of space. Because at the time I hadn't questioned these things. But then later I learned, no, that was Planet New Mexico. You just saw a section of the land rendered into a sphere by this lens. And nobody corrects you at the time. So they just let you absorb the imagery. And just like osmosis, you accept we're on a big curved ball.
And do you think, so at the top of the totem pole or the cabal or the top of the pyramid, who do you think is behind the directorate? Is it really, a lot of the symbolism is somewhat Masonic or even Greek. They put all of these interesting names and Greek gods and things on their rockets. Who is towards the top of this directorate when it comes to spacecraft and flight?
That's a very good question because recently I've been describing NASA as an Egyptian mystery school. But if you look into the modern New Age movement, it's eclectic and they borrow from everything. Even Freemasonry, from the 4th degree to 32, it goes beyond just Judeo-Christian and it delves into everything. And there's a common fundamental framework that I think is most important to look at here. And it has to do with, I think, controlling mankind physically, emotionally, mentally, cognitive infiltration, and then what we would term spiritually. So I don't know who is in control, but it's premature to point fingers based on the nomenclature and symbols because whoever's behind it sees these things as interchangeable. In fact, the space program is using syncretism to merge these old concepts with science. The Russian rocket pioneers were open about this. I can go so far as to say aliens are a fabrication based on angels for the New Age. So who's behind it? I don't know. Could be someone that we've never even heard of. I'm certain that whoever's at the top of this thing didn't make it. It pre-exists modern media, and modern media is the newest iteration of this thing, whatever it is.
Epic. Keep up the great work, Tim. Appreciate the deprogram, and have a great one.
Awesome. Thanks for the call and thanks for the information, and we'll probably continue to talk about this. So have a great afternoon. Thank you. All right, now I believe, let me point something out too. Satellites are fake. Prove me wrong. Burden of proof's not on me. But more, they're likely using Loon X. And if you look into stratospheric balloons and Loon X and its capabilities, it was doing everything Starlink is advertised to do, purports to do, apparently does. However, it was done with stratospheric balloons. They retired Loon X because it wasn't economically viable. And then Starlink comes out. It's not hard to see that we're dealing with stratospheric balloons. Infinite Plane Radio.
Tim, John the Plumber.
Hey, what's up, John the Plumber? How was your afternoon?
You're right. I am always working. And last time I called you, I was working outside. That's why I didn't sound good. Right now, I'm in my van. I'm on my way to another job right now, and that's it. But here's what I wanted to talk about is, we're all fans of this medium, podcasting. To me, it's basically internet radio. Sometimes there's video, sometimes there's no video. What makes it so great is you can work, you can do things, fold laundry, clean your house, and do this at the same time. So, we're all fans of podcasting, and YouTube's probably the biggest one. I listen to history things, about the Sumerians and stuff. But here's what I wanted to call. I'm sure you listened to it too. It was the Joe Rogan Bart Sibrel the other day.
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit. What is your take on Rogan and Sibrel?
I don't know, man. It's you could look at it from so many different levels. You could look at it just as the basic surface level that Rogan. My initial instinct was that it was genuine, and Rogan maybe he's got CIA buddies now. I don't think Joe Rogan's in the CIA, but he's definitely had like Mike Baker and stuff on his show, and they probably just like he's always saying, "I'll sell my soul to see the aliens." Well, they showed them, and it's not aliens. I think it's a spiritual entity. Personally, I don't even believe in the model of the universe. So, like, my first surface level was that whole conversation was genuine. That Bart Zabrell isn't in on it. That he's actually trying to. It's funny that like he still believes in space though.
Yes,
But
that's
I
a
had
contradiction.
an epiphany while listening to it. Something I never thought about, even though I'd seen the documentaries or one or two documentaries. When the old astronaut whacks him, gives him a slap. I remember watching all that stuff years ago, probably even before I was a flat earther. I was just being entertained by the internet and stuff, and then maybe later on I got sucked into it. But I had an epiphany that I never thought about until I heard this conversation the other day. So even when I first became a flat earther, I thought that they actually went in low Earth orbit for these experiments, whatever, even going back to like the Mercury missions and stuff. I thought that we had made it to 200 miles up or whatever, 400 miles
Okay,
up, and they're in
this
this
is a
little
great.
capsule thing.
Yes, yes, I know what you mean. This is a great point.
I
Really
was
quick,
thinking
because they
so when they made the video where they're showing like they blocked out the view of the window, I thought that was actually happening in a capsule up until 2 weeks ago.
okay.
I was like, dang it, when it really went in the capsule.
Let me explain
I don't think that happened now.
for people who don't know.
I don't think that anymore.
Bart
I think
Zabrell
they're in
did.
an airplane that was, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
Bart
ahead.
Zabrell did a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and he gives the impression that the astronauts were in space, like halfway to the moon even, but they couldn't make it all the way. So
Right.
it's deceptive. And what I'm saying here, what I'm suggesting is that Bart Zabrell has to be in on it. He's in on it to make sure that you are able to disbelieve the moon landing, but still believe in outer space. I think that's what's happening.
Okay. Well, I think they're just in a regular 747 now. That was basically, who knows? Freaking Stanley Kubrick could have been on that plane. He could have been the director for that one too. That was a great show the other day with the Stanley Kubrick expert. He was really entertaining.
Oh, we'll
But
talk
yeah,
again. We'll talk
when I
again.
was listening to this,
And one more thing,
he was good.
Bart
I
Zabrell
was
did
just like,
say he went on
God,
there to say that this is ridiculous, that NASA's being blackmailed by China into giving them secret space program technology. Well, what do you think the secret space program technology is? CGI, Final Cut Pro, Photoshop, harnesses, Hollywood special effects. That's it.
a lot of these guys, when you ask them, I watch other ones like the Sean Ryan show. He's really good. They would get military experts on sometimes, Navy SEALs and whatnot. They always like get all stoner and start like, yo, but what do you think aliens are, bro? What do you think the
Yeah,
UFOs are?
aliens, bro. I
And
hate those
so
conversations. They're so. I mean, these are it's clickbait, but they act mystified by design, and I think it's part of building a mythology for truthers, where they're able to believe in secret space programs, but NASA's lying. But there's some truth there, like Elon Musk is really engaged in something or something. They've managed to salvage the big lie by sacrificing a few components of it, but they still control it. And Joe Rogan's there to guardrail the conversation.
half of these guys will say things, well, I think it's aliens. And sometimes they say, well, they gave us technology, so some of it's human. And then some of them, have my viewpoint that it's something spiritual, could be demons. And I think even recently I heard someone say, well, who knows, maybe demons have been giving us technology. What if it's that, like, we don't have anything better than airplanes? Maybe that's the best we got, and it's just been faking it all. But, like, freaking projections and movie magic. Your guy said something great the other day, man. It blew my mind about when he said, like, how, like, basically the Wizard of Oz parallels Stanley Kubrick, and how he, like, just fooled the world with, like, his movie magic. I was like, what if that's all it is? What if it's all just smoke and mirrors?
Well, listen to this, because Bart Zabrell and Rogan were talking about some kind of alien submarine beneath the water going 500 knots.
Hmm.
Well, nothing can go that fast. So now they're arguing, was it aliens or was it hidden technology that man is using? And so they're engaging in a false dichotomy. It's either man or aliens. Well, no one's asking, was there even something moving that speed, or was it all just some simulation? So they get us to take some simulation or something on a screen, and then we argue about whether aliens did it or man did it, assuming it's real. That's the mind game that they're playing, and they're playing it expertly. In fact, it's a way of getting you into their conversation where you assume it's like loading the question. There's this expression I heard from a car salesman. It was like, if you can get them debating about what color, you've already sold them on a car. And so now we're debating
Right.
aliens or man. Well, you sold us on this fake 500 knots per hour submarine.
Not to mention having Jamie cut in, the producer, cutting in every 5 minutes. I was like, my first instinct is like, dude, Jamie works for the CIA. I know it. He's telling Joe to basically shut the fuck up, or else they're going to come in with the vax. They're going to jab him in the throat. No, I don't know. But I just don't know what to think. But it was entertaining, I guess. My whole point is now I'm pretty sure whatever we saw on TV, well, we didn't see it. We weren't alive then, but whatever they show on the internet now, that was done in a movie or in an airplane for sure.
Yes.
That whole thing was just, they did not go and there was no capsule. There could be flat earthers right now that still think like the Mercury missions. The guy went around in some little cone-shaped doohickey, maybe 200 miles up. That never happened. The best we got is airplanes, and everything else is just balloons, like satelloons, whatever. They're faking it, all that.
Well,
shit.
they need us to believe in the secret space program. If you don't accept the main, this is one of these splits. If you don't trust government, you don't trust NASA, you still have to believe in outer space. Why? Because Space Force, Trump, the whole Q narrative. It's this neo-eschatology rapture story about aliens coming down to save us. But Space Force is a huge component of the Q mythos and of Trump's story. And it's been one of these things, like predictive programming has always hinted at this. That 1958 Trackdown episode where the guy named Trump, the snake oil salesman, says he's going to protect the villagers from a cosmic threat. That was foreshadowing of
Oh yeah,
Space
you
Force.
played the clips. You played the clips back around when when COVID was happening, or I don't remember, but I remember you playing the clips on YouTube. I watched it. That was pretty entertaining. I mean, what do you think it means, though? Do you think it means, one, that there's time travelers that are coming back telling us what happened? Why would they let all this information out to basically give us clues that why would they tell us that we're in a movie?
I don't
How does
think
that benefit them?
that's a good question. I don't think they're telling us. See, it's exoteric and esoteric. We're not meant to know. We're the outliers. The majority of society, they have no clue that our history
They
is
can't
being
even see it.
that our look, yeah, news is history, and it gets approved in advance, scripted in advance, acted out real time, but they don't know how controlled it is. So for the most part, it's easy to explain if you ask me. It doesn't make sense if you understand it. If you see it, you're like, well, wait a minute here. This is all just eerie coincidences, I guess. But then you look deeper and you're like, this can't be coincidence. And most people just default and they say it must be aliens or it must be God or the devil. But I just kept digging. I looked past God, I looked past the devil, and I found out, nope, there's actually another layer to this thing.
Yeah. Everyone's talking about the vaccine again. I keep watching like little TikToks of like young people,
Yeah, I don't even talk about it.
pacemakers
I don't even
and
talk about
whatnot.
it. I don't talk about it here because one, we already know everybody's opinion, and two, it will get us censored, and three, um,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, really, it's a government-controlled psyop to be against it. It's a government-controlled
So
psyop
that must
to
be
be
the
for
most
it.
dangerous one. It must be the most dangerous one because you'll hear people on YouTube talking about flat Earth, about the moon landing. You can say anything. You can criticize anything. You could criticize China. But if you go there, oh, everyone. And I don't blame you. I don't
That's
want you to
no,
get.
that's
We
reverse.
know
That's
that it's
no, no,
caused you a
that's
lot of
it's
problems.
reverse psychology. It's a trick. The anti-position is always
Hmm.
reverse psychology, just like making people afraid of contrails. It's reverse psychology. If you're afraid of it, you're just as bad as the people who think you need it. I'm saying I'm anti-anti. And I'm not going to sacrifice this channel for an anti position because that's an NPC position, just as is the pro position. There's a third option, non. I am a non V, not pro V, not anti V. I'm non. I don't want to
If
put.
everyone's doing it, if everyone, it could be anything, right? If everyone's doing the same exact thing, probably don't do it. When the ice bucket challenge happened, I was like, I don't know what all this shit means, but I'm not doing it just because everyone else is doing it. Screw you guys.
But add to that,
And
if
to me,
everybody's
that's why
not
I
doing
just didn't go along.
if everybody's doing it, don't do it. But if everybody's not doing it,
Yeah.
don't not do it. I mean, don't take the reflexive anti-position. But I appreciate your comments as always, and thank you for listening. And call back anytime.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, thank
You
you.
have a good evening. Bye-bye.
All right, phones are still open. 505-359-0420. The needle issue is very simple. Pro is wrong. Anti is wrong. The correct analysis here is that in this modern paradigm, they had to reintroduce archaic concepts, eschatology, sin, heaven, etc., evil. Well, sin is not something that you're going to believe in if you're an atheist, just like you're not going to believe in God or God bringing floods. But if you're an atheist and you believe in the religion of scientism, you can be easily coerced or tricked into believing in modern counterparts: Gaia, pandemics, sin, flood myth. Infinite Plane Radio.
Oh, wait. What's up, my boy? What's good, Tim? This is where it's at.
Oh, hey, yeah.
How are you, man?
Just catching up
Hey,
on.
there's so much to talk about, but it really hit me probably in the middle of all these protests and stuff like that. We're trying to figure out who the meta-scriptors are, who's at the top of that pyramid. It's academia. It's academics. I'm telling you, all of it starts with them. And I'm not going to be on here too long because I've been doing a little day drinking. But Columbia University, Space Shuttle, Columbia. It's all leads back to universities. These are the people that start everything, even down to sports medicine. All of it comes from them. They are the meta-scriptors, and they give the directions to the creatives, the Kubricks, Stephen King's, Spike Lee, all of it. Pulitzer Prize winner Kendrick Lamar, a rapper. All of it comes from the academic side of it, and it just flows from the universities to politics, college football, all of it. And it just hit me one day when they were talking about those protests at Columbia, and why am I thinking about Space Shuttle Columbia? All of it comes from the academics, my boy. Great job. I'm having a good time. I'm going to drop off the line. But that's my take on it, and I'm going to hear what you say about that.
Awesome. Excellent points. I'm glad you brought this up, and thank you for calling. Have a great day, and I'll continue along this thread.
Absolutely. Peace.
All right. This is where it's at. Great points here. Okay, a couple of things. This really strikes a chord with me here because I'm reading this book now called In the Country of the Blind, and it's about a journalist who finds out that in the 1950s, some kind of supercomputer was invented, and this allowed some small group to somehow control history. Now, I'm only a third of the way through the book, but the suggestion here is that they were dedicated, a secret society were dedicated to, quote, developing a secret science to guide the human race away from war to a better destiny. And the implication here is that through control of history, they've managed to take control of humanity. But it doesn't explain how. Well, I'm not there yet. But and the science they created, the science of history, is kleology, for Cleo, some Greek muse of history. Now, what I'm getting into here is this book is about the manipulation of history. I found this book the other day, just quote, randomly. And one of the points that it gets into right away is the education of the masses is ground zero for this operation, starting with school. the uniformity in all of the schools, getting all of the students at the same time onto the same sheet. And it mentions, I believe it mentions, um, is it John Dewey? Anyway, my point being, I'm reading this book, and the character is getting into this idea that in order to control people, you have to start early. You have to brainwash them from the very beginning. And if you were to arrive in the 21st century and you didn't go through the regular education and all the programming, you probably wouldn't be programmable. You would have been unprogrammed. There's a process that goes into being programmable, sort of like being indoctrinated into a religion. If you're not in a religion and you go to a religious ceremony for like Easter or something later in life, and you see people crying and kneeling and praying, and Jesus is under a purple robe, you might be you might be experiencing some culture shock. So, what the caller brings up is yes, that the academia is a huge part of it, and also the whole processing of the individuals through the educational systems that already set their frame of references, make them subject to the proper authorities, the authority of the screen in particular. It's a great point. When I first started looking at this holistically, before I started comparing or using the symbol of the monolith to describe it, I said that we're involved in some kind of a game. And I use the acronym GAME for government, academia, media, entertainment. That you can't understand the game program unless you recognize that these areas are intertwined: government, academia, media, entertainment. And the caller really reiterates that. Now, he brought up Columbia, which is interesting. We were discussing Columba is the dove that carries the branch to Noah to let him know that the flood waters have receded. So it's a symbol of the phoenix, really, the dove. It's another one of their reset symbols. Reset, revolution, recycle, it's all connected to the same concept. Interestingly, I was just looking this up too. Space Shuttle Columbia was the 113th space shuttle flight, and it blew up. Immolation, flames. Phoenix. The Challenger blew up at 1 minute 13 seconds into its flight. So there's this 113 connected with both of these. And the number 113 is very strongly connected with, of course, 311, 113, but Pixar films has a lot of 113s. And in Pixar film Wall-E, the world has been so covered in trash that we have to leave. It's like Noah's myth. And we go into this big spaceship, like a space ark, until the Earth is habitable again. And they send down to Earth a robot that looks like a dove to get the branch to bring it back. So this dove-like robot ties in this Noah's myth connection to another post-reset movie with the number 113 heavily encoded into it. So the 113 association with Columbia, Columbine, the Challenger, there's something to it. They're sparking a revolution. They're starting something in Columbia is what I kind of take it to mean. But it's a really great point because we've been educated for the brainwashing. You have to be molded into it. There's this really great movie called Room, which I take as a metaphor for the boxed in mind. If you're a normie, you live in the room. And in this movie, it's a true story about a woman who's kidnapped by this psychopath who puts her in a shed, and they have a baby, and she raises this child in the shed, in the room is what they call it. His only access to the outside world is the TV. Now, when he's close to 5 years old, she prepares him to escape, and she has to tell him, "I'm going to help you get out into the world outside of room." And he doesn't believe her that there's anything outside of the shed. He actually starts screaming at her, kind of like how glurfs will scream and cry when you tell them the world is flat. He's screaming and crying at his mom, saying, "There is nothing outside of room. You're lying." And she says to him, "No, I was lying the first 5 years of your life. Right now, I am unlying." The default in our modern world is accepting lies and programming. The default. And of course, you're going to balk and scream and reject anything outside of what you're programmed, if you're programmed properly. and you'll just reject it. But if you're a critical thinker, you may not, and you might find out that there's actually life outside of the room. Catching up on some comments. Armin Ree says, will Dove let us know when the fallout has cleared? Interesting. What would be the counterpart? There's been a lot of Phoenix counterparts, like the bat. In fact, Christopher Nolan's Burning Bat has been emblematic of the Phoenix in the last 10 years of predictive programming. So there may be something with that. The bat, then there's the movie Songbird, which has a COVID-23 scenario attached to it. All right, let's see here. I'm going through your comments. Conscious Daughter says, I never understood the reason why they named the state of District of Columbia and made it the capital of the United States. Interesting. Lieutenant Weinberg says, between you, Tom, and Jake, there's 3 takes on chemtrails. Well, chemtrails don't exist. And bringing out Hitchens' razor, if something is asserted without evidence, it can be dismissed without evidence. They don't exist. Mandela effects don't exist. Now, there is a Mandela effect, but it's the result of retroactive interference, interrogator bias, limited options, false choices. It's a mind game, loaded questions. So the Mandela effect is actually a form of gaslighting, and it's the false delusions that one picks up through the gaslighting. Now, chemtrails don't exist. Contrails exist. Mislabeling a contrail a chemtrail doesn't win you any points in the debate. And you can't even enter a debate if you haven't done research on the counterpoints, if you don't know what the other side is actually saying, and if you haven't debunked that. So before you can debunk that that contrails are contrails, you would have to analyze a number of things going back decades, specifically the Appleman chart and the predictability and the use of contrails in predicting weather. You would also, my point here is that these things don't exist, but there's a reason why people believe in them. But your false belief is not equivalent to verifiable and testable knowledge. And look, if you really want to debate it, we will debate it, but we're going to put money down, and we're going to do it live, and we're going to be completely honest. Suzette Ann says, the stream is buffering for me. Is it only on my side? I'll see if anyone else is noticing any buffering, and I'll close any unnecessary windows. Yeah, we'll have to debate. I'm going to drive out to where Jake the A-hole is on my Autohoaxology 101 tour. No, we have to put money on it. It can go to a charity. It can go to purchasing chemtrail masks. If that's where you want to invest it, you can give away chemtrail masks for people who need to be aware of the dangers that they're in. I'm not doing it for the money, but I feel like if people don't have any skin in the game, there's no consequences for losing. And what would constitute winning or losing in this debate, we'll have to work that out. But I think at a minimum, we can say that's a logical fallacy, doesn't work. You can't ask me what are they spraying. That's not a valid question. Sorry. It loads the question with that there is a spray. And when we take away all of the logical fallacies, appeal to motive, faulty causality, shifting the burden of proof, appeals to ignorance, arguments from ignorance, what do you have left? And I think there's a good reason why. Why would they lie about chemtrails? Well, it's because the reflexive, reactionary antis will not believe in climate change. But the government decided that to control all these minds, everybody must fear that man's going to destroy the world, that the elite are capable of destroying the world. The left wing will train them to believe that the world is being destroyed by the free people, the capitalists, with their consumption of fossil fuels. But the right wing They love their fossil fuels, they love their big trucks, and they hate government. So we'll convince the right wingers that the world is being destroyed through secret government projects like geoengineering. So now both sides that hate each other are in total agreement that man is the enemy and man's destroying the world, and they're each pointing at each other. That's because each side is lined up on the opposite side of the political horseshoe. This is mind control in action. Jake the A-hole says, I know all your talking points, Tim. You cannot debunk chemtrails above Vegas during summer. No humidity, 110 plus temps, and the sky is loaded with trails. Okay, we will debate them in Vegas beneath the trails. And if you have a point, and I plan to bring a meteorologist. Like, I don't mean to debate, with the choir or the people who've only talked about this for years, but I want to bring in experts and objective people. Meteorologists for sure. I do know a couple of pilots, and I will go out there to Vegas and we will do a live streamed public debate. And it won't be a shouting match because that's one way to turn people away and to ruin a good opportunity. But it'll be one of these things, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and additional questions, making our best cases, closing arguments. Elephant Tusk says, know your internal truth and pay no attention to what others tell you reality is. Well, I think it's important to take feedback. In fact, I go out of my way to confront the people who disagree with me vehemently so I can understand why. And I understand why people believe in chemtrails. It's a default belief, but you don't know them to exist. It's merely a belief. You have no evidence to prove it. And this raises a whole lot of questions. Why aren't you an activist? Look at Greta. I mean, aren't you inspired by that? She's so mad about these invisible gases destroying the world that you're doing, and she goes out there and she does something. I see other chemtrail activists setting themselves on fire, laying on the road, destroying priceless artwork. They're really down for their cause. And then I can't even get a single chemtrail believer to protest at an airport or to wear a mask. Kunifi says, can somebody explain to me how these planes cast shadows in mid-air? Ooh, do some para. Research chemtrails if Jake wins. Research contrails if Tim wins. Here's the thing. If Jake the a-hole wins and beats me in the debate, I will become the most vocal anti-chemtrail activist in the world. Like there hasn't been one. Like, there have been people claiming or bitching about it, talking about it, warning you about it, but nobody's actually done anything about it. And if I put my mind to stopping chemtrails, I think I can make something happen. We will definitely stop it. We will outshine those climate activists. And I'll use climate activism as inspiration. We'll look at climate activists. Where have they succeeded? What have they done? And maybe we'll even hijack some of their protests, some of their marches, and make it, like, I really, look, if I was a believer, you would all be marching behind me because I would do something about it. Not like the current crop of chemtrail believers who just sit in their Jeeps vaping about it. Just vaping and e-raging. I'm so mad about that. Down here, vaping. You might as well be vaping chemtrails. Lieutenant Weinberg says, blank charity, I'll donate both to Tim and Jake if you talk about... Yeah, look, just talking about it and bringing the best points forward will be a good thing. I'm not afraid of losing. I'm not afraid of not winning either. I may not make any kind of traction with the believers, but I have a few points I think I can make. I think I can establish at a minimum that chemtrail belief is merely an opinion. It's not a scientific observation. We can go and just start with that. Jake says, Tim, 85% of people don't believe in chemtrails and don't know what they are or have heard of it, so who are you kind of trying to convince and why? Okay, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to deconstruct a false paradigm. And the reason why I'm targeting chemtrails is that it's an umbrella conspiracy that's used as a way to draw in all alternative thinkers who lean right and drag them onto the political horseshoe. It's a politicized conspiracy theory. That's why. And I'm stepping out of the whole political realm. It's a political opinion. It's as bad as climate change. So it's an eschatology. It's a replacement doomsday, and it's an opportunity for people to virtue signal while also hypocritically not protecting themselves from what they claim is a threat. Like, I have a lot of problems with chemtrails, to be honest. Oh, here's another thing. I think contrails are beautiful. I think anthropogenic contrails are evidence of progress, that we've entered a very hedonistic phase in humanity where we are flying for the F of it, wasting, wastefully flying, blissfully flying. And the fact that our hot jet engines are leaving these snowy, icy trails up above, to me, that's like, yeah, okay, that's a good thing. We're going somewhere. But also another reason too, I want to break Trutherville. In other words, I want to shake up the foundations of the controlled opposition alt media. And they have a number of what I consider to be orthodoxies. And if these orthodoxies can be demonstrated to be false, those who have been falsely deceived or deceived into these false beliefs will want to know why. And they will become aware of what we're doing. And let's say I talk about this effectively here with you, we debate it. Afterward, I'm pretty sure we will have a few hundred, if not a few thousand people look closer at auto hoaxing, at media skepticism, including skepticism of alt media that weren't before. The skepticism we see among truthers is only directed at the woke and at the left and at the mainstream. It doesn't go far enough. Jake says, was it a coincidence the contrails were blocking the eclipse in so many places? I heard that. Now, I do have something about the eclipse I wanted to get to. Someone had talked about it. Yesterday we were talking about the nootropic where magas are covering nicotine patches in deer blood and then sucking on it to get smarter. Okay, I think I found what I was looking for. Yes, this is it. One of my favorite QAnon channels goes by Kim Runner, and she posted a tweet this morning asking people, do you feel different since the eclipse? Has anything changed for you? Do things feel different for you since the eclipse on 4/8? Cowboys 2B says yes. The sun comes up at 5:33 rather than, oh, sorry, that one's a troll. Here we go. So this person is asking, has the eclipse changed you? So we didn't have an apocalypse. It was just an eclipse. Carl Soda said, not really, but the sun doesn't give away the same energy anymore. Wow. Kimberly says, I feel like I'm here, but I'm not here. Not sure why. I feel the energy more around me than I ever have. Good feelings, hope and love wrapped around the fighting spirit of God. The Enclave says, in some ways, personally, yes, I've changed. I'm not as involved in decoding anymore. Now I'm focused on my recovery and less on decoding the comms. I think the eclipse showed me that this operation may take several more years to conclude. They were all expecting a big doomsday, a big reveal. Novax says, I've had some problems increase, but aside from my initial reaction, I feel like I'm handling what I'm being dealt with much better than in the past. And I'm not stressing about it. Again, this is our post-apocalypse after action review. Houston Lady says, I feel worse, heavy negative energy, hopelessness. I feel like time has slowed down. I have a lot of nerve pain. I'm tired. Nothing tastes good anymore. I can barely eat enough to survive. I want out real, real bad. Now, I would suggest self-immolation, but I've been banned from Twitter. Jaylin801 says, I go for walks nightly, so I'm aware of every star in the sky and its placement. But since the eclipse, I've noticed that all of the stars have shifted. Time has sped up, and I wake up 4 times in the night. So time has sped up for Lynn, but slowed down for Houston Lady. Smart Spirit 999 says, the sun is so different now. The color is not the same. I'm scared that I'm not getting proper sunlight. I'm grounding, but it's not the same. Big Love Kofefe says, energies yes, but it feels like Groundhog's Day. The story's going to break and then go quiet within days. My family is still stuck in the matrix of lies, and it gets hard to explain to them. I'm ready for this mess to end. I'm tired of the emotional roller coaster. Just a few examples of how the QAnoners are coping with the post-apocalypse blues. What a letdown. The world didn't end. They have nothing to live for. Let's see what else here. Jake says, many report not being able to see the eclipse due to chemtrails, but Tim says they're contrails. That means Tim thinks planes coincidentally flew in front of the eclipse the whole time. Well, aren't contrails from the same planes that give us chemtrails? Or this is why we need to debate. Are we asserting that these are different sets of aircraft? That's like one of the first things we need to establish. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to get out there. Lieutenant Weinberg says, Tim, the people who watch you aren't in that political horseshoe you talk about. I just want you to know those trails are, and I don't know if those engines create a wave or something. It's not that easy. Well, here's the thing. You can speculate all day from 20,000 feet away. But if you haven't inspected a jet engine, then you may not be in a position to offer an informed opinion. And what I advocate here is informed non-belief. I totally scoff at low information non-believers. Like, oh, I don't believe in duck-billed platypuses. Well, duck-billed platypuses exist, even if you don't believe in them, even though you're incredulous. That's a low information disbeliever, meaning they didn't go out and find one. They didn't go talk to a zookeeper. So they didn't gain a lot of information before they decided it didn't exist. That's a low information non-believer. That person has a different operating system than the informed non-believer. And the informed non-believer is someone who says, I don't know if I want to believe that. Let me look into it. Oh, it's bullshit. The skeptic, in other words. And in today's world, we're meant to be low information believers. Just believe it all with no evidence. You can find this to be true time and again. Tell somebody about some fake news story that you know is fake, and they'll say, oh, I think it's real. But they don't know anything about it. They don't know who did the shooting, how many people died, what the motive was, but they believe it's true because it was on TV. And you're like, no, here are the reasons it's fake. I'm an informed non-believer. You're a low information believer. And then here in the corner of Trutherville, you got this growing body of people who are low information non-believers who are way too comfortable saying they don't believe in something. Sorry, there's a point where it's not valid. You can say, I don't believe in the sun. Well, sorry, your opinion doesn't matter to me. That's a low information non-belief. Linda says, everyone that argues chemtrails need to go to the country for a while, no airports. Well, Lieutenant Weinberg says, I agree. I'm of the opinion that I don't know. Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't know, but we can follow that. If we don't know, we merely believe. You can follow that up by getting more information, and then you become a knower. You have to find the edge. We had this documentary concept in 2018, 2019, which we're still going to do in the form of IPR reportage, where we have to find the edge. Not of the world, although that may be some endeavor, but we have to find where false explanations no longer suffice, and then how far can you go beyond it. We have to end the habit of being a believer and replace it with being a knower, which might end up leaving you in a position of agnosticism about a lot of things. So we have a lot of questions, but we're not running around with curiosity killing false explanations. Someone else I'd like to talk to about chemtrails is Crow 777. And here's another reason for going after chemtrail theory. It's an umbrella. It's like a big tent, almost like Q is, where everything gets a pass. So now you're talking about this serious thing with serious repercussions. But then you have people like Crow 777 who have 1 billion followers, and he's like, yeah, when I was looking at the eclipse and there were chemtrails, so I boiled vinegar in my yard, and the skies turned blue. So I don't know if I want to be under the same tent as the vinegar boilers. If you're a vinegar boiler, you can't sit with us. And it's because you're being deceptive. You're being deceptive to yourself and to your followers. That's faulty causality. Just because A precedes B doesn't mean A caused B. And this is consistent. This is a logical fallacy that is consistently seen through chemtrail belief, through climate change belief. Jake the A-hole says, saying frozen water exists above Vegas in the summer is ridiculous. Okay, so when are we going to do it? Summer solstice? We'll have to pick a date. We're going to pick the hottest day in Vegas, and we are going to live stream a debate between these things. Jake says, I'm not Crow 77777 Tim, you're a Mason, so you cannot sit at my table. Yeah, you can decide who can and can't sit at your table. And I'm not excluding you. I'm just saying that if you're going to, in bad faith, I don't suggest that you're offering anything in bad faith. I'm saying Crow 777 Pro offers bad faith claims. There's no way a guy with 30 years in photography is confusing a lens glare for another sun. Or there's no way that with his experience with moon gazing that he's unaware of wingtip vortices. I mean, check this out. Do you all know what the Crow interference is? And this is where I think Crow 777 gets his name, if that's even his real name. The Crow instability is the effect that the vortices on the wingtips create in the air, and these swirling jets behind them, these vortices create these distortions in the atmosphere, and you'll often see it in the contrails. Like here's an example. Now this is called a Crow instability because the guy who discovered it and coined it, his name is Crow. So I think it's very interesting that Crow 777, who's known for the lunar wave, is or has the same name because the lunar wave is caused by wingtip vortices. Plane flies by, disturbs the atmosphere, you record the moon, and it looks like there's a wave. That's a wingtip vortice. That's a Crow instability. And then Crow 777 comes out and he's like, look, the moon has just refreshed. There's a lunar wave. So to me, that's a bad faith claim. What Jake the A-hole is saying here is that my explanation, Mick West's explanation, is inconsistent with the climate in Vegas. So our explanation that this is a natural phenomenon to be expected at 20,000 feet in the rarefied air could be debunked. So that's why we have to debate. So what you're seeing here is simply the disturbance created by the wings. Look, Jake the A-hole says, you agree with Mick West. I had another chemtrail believer say, you agree with CNN. Well, you do too. Mick West agrees that water is wet and the sky is blue. I'm sorry, but just because somebody you disagree with on everything else agrees with you on some things doesn't mean you have to reject those things. Sky is blue. CNN reports. Uh-oh, truthers, what are you going to do? How are you going to explain that? Did they geoengineer us into having a different colored sky? All right, let's continue. Cunify says, we cannot see any differences between cotton balls, smoke, clouds, or trails when zoomed in. Clouds are not some flying water, and those planes might not be planes. This is why we're going to debate. Are we talking about regular airplanes or secret airplanes or something else altogether? And I wasn't looking too closely at this issue until I realized this is a flex point. This is a point where we could cause a rift. This is a stress point is what I mean. Like this is where there's a barrier here. If all these sheeple in this sheep pen, this big paddock called Trutherville, and it's packed, and the guardrails are straining with mainly, I think, under the weight of a lack of evidence. And so they keep on chanting, chemtrails are killing you, be afraid of contrails, and it's all poison. And I'm coming in here and I'm saying this is fake. And of course, they have the numbers. And I look like I'm coming from mainstreamville because I'm saying their conspiracy's fake. But guess what? A lot of conspiracies are actually fake and controlled. So I'm thinking is, we debate this issue and perhaps break this guardrail. And if I'm right, there's going to be an exodus. There's going to be a lot of questions raised, but I think we'll have a lot of people have a bit of a breakthrough. This is big. Look, this is right-wing climate change. And you could never get a lefty to disbelieve in climate change. They're predisposed to hate capitalism. The fact they can scapegoat capitalism for bad weather is too good for them to pass up on. You think they care about the truth? What is that expression? The first casualty of war is the truth. Well, we were in a mind war, and it's all essentially lies from the get-go. Yeah, that was Hiram Johnson, isolationist senator for California, 1917 to 1945. Anyway, he's the one who said that. It's true. Dewis in Paris says, contrails versus chemtrails is a dialectic that could be a third door. I would say no, because chemtrails have been established to exist as an observable, repeatable, testable, explainable phenomenon. There's a lot of bad argumentation on the other side. They'll say cloud seeding. Like someone said to me, oh, you don't believe in cloud seeding then? Well, we're talking about contrails versus chemtrails. No one's talking about cloud seeding, and cloud seeding doesn't leave trails like that in the same way, nor does it make it rain out of nothing. And we're going to have to debate this because people will say, well, it was a clear day, a bunch of planes flew over, we saw some trails, and now it's raining. Okay, well, that's because the conditions conducive for rain are the same conditions conducive for persistent trails. The conditions preceded the formation of the trails and the rain. The trails didn't cause the rain, but they were an indicator rain was a possibility. Sailors have known this for a long time. They never make this error of thinking that the trails caused the rain. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing that could do that in existence. Another thing here, if you believe in chemtrails, I don't want you flying to any conspiracy theory conferences, not even a flat earth conference. If you believe in chemtrails, you get on a plane, you're complicit in genocide, in Gaia-cide, in ecocide. Like you're basically saying, okay, I know that I'm dumping poison on children below me, but I want to get there a lot faster. So you should be on a no-fly list. That's what I will do. If I'm converted to chemtrail belief, I will put myself on a no-fly list, and I will insist that every chemtrail believer do the same. Jake says, so every picture of chemtrail tanks inside planes must be fake, and all spray nozzles photographed on the outside must be faked. See, this is good, because now we have to determine, are these coming out of a specialized nozzle, or are these the trails coming from commercial airlines? And if we can end this conversation or end this debate with saying, okay, this couldn't be commercial planes, then we can start figuring out what we're really looking at here. But there's all kinds of explanations. Ronnie and Johnny up in California, no, Canada. They strike me as like left coasties, but they're in California. I mean, in Canada. Ronnie and Johnny from Event Skeptic, they used to say that what you're really seeing is a war in heaven. That we're told these are airplanes, but these are actually angels and demons. The demons are gassing us, chemtrails. The angels are spraying good chemtrails. But that you can get rid of chemtrails not by boiling vinegar, because that's silly, but by praying. That by shouting the name of Yawahashi to the sky, praying in their way, they have managed to actually create blue skies. Jake says, all chemtrail believers think Delta passenger planes are making trails is false. Okay, so again, we have to decide, is this some kind of an operation where some planes do it, some don't? All planes do it, or they switch it on and off? And then is there a positive correlation with weather, or is that some sort of camouflage? I mean, if I'm arguing against my own position, I would argue that, okay, we have to create the perception that this is not causing that, so we will claim it's weather first. Like there could be a rigging of the data here and how we interpret it. But we'll have to formally debate it under a scorching summer sun in Las Vegas. We will get sunburnt on camera talking about it, looking at these persistent trails in the background. Jake says Ronnie and Johnny are provably shills. Cunify has debunked their map. I never said they weren't shills. Ronnie and Johnny aren't even credible witnesses. They were convinced that Mad Mike had a CGI rocket, and they don't have a basis in objective reality. They're also part of a cult, and they believe that they are in the Bible, that they are quite literally the two witnesses in the Bible. So you can believe them if you want to. They probably believe in Mandela effects. And yes, they're likely shills. But shills for what? Do they get hired by the governments to make certain things look ridiculous? It could be that. At least they did some work with their model, I suppose. But one of the starting points I think I had here with both of them is that they insisted that they could build a model to replace the globe without adding in information, without exploration. Cunify says, Ronnie and Johnny, I watched them a few days ago. IPS had beef with Awake Souls. They called IPS a snot-nosed kid. Okay, well, if you want to post a link to your debate with them, they believe in Pac-Man Earth, which means you just keep going west, and then you'll appear on the east. But you didn't go around the ball. You went through some kind of is it a portal? Maybe you don't even see it. Jake says they are controlled ops to the AE map with a circling sun. I kind of got the idea that they were controlled opposition trolls because of their behaviors. Instead of focusing on finding more information, they got into labeling everybody who didn't watch them Satanists. And I was always blown away by how their live streams only have like 10 or 15 people there at a time. Like they can't get any viewers or watchers. And in the age of cringe entertainment, you think that they would be huge. They're not marketing right. But the attempt to create a model prematurely is always going to end in you can't prove it, they can't prove their globe, belief system versus belief system. Nobody walks away from these debates any smarter. It's a non-starter. Majori Cohen says, I literally stood outside and watched planes seeding the sky, then 2 hours later it rains because those trails spread out and grade up the sky. You know how many people I've literally heard saying that? And how many people have literally not bothered to do a time lapse? Show me a time lapse of where contrails make it rain. Please. It happens every day, according to you. You've seen it. You know somebody who's seen it. Every chemtrail believer says, yeah, I watched it. I watched these trails from these planes, and then it rained. Oh, that sounds really cool. Cool story, bro. Hitchens Razor. Come back when you have a time lapse, and don't say you don't have a camera. Don't say you can't do time lapse. Show me. Show me a rainstorm started by... And look, listen, just for reference here. This person was watching planes. They didn't say drones. They didn't say flying saucers. They didn't say unmarked military planes. They said just planes. 2 hours after it rained. And then I would also want to know, if you're going to make these types of observations, a time lapse, I want to know what is the location, time of day, so I can look at the weather. And I want to see if condensation trails are consistent with the weather. So we have to look to see if all these things align. And I will bring this up in the debates, the predictability question. Look, I know NASA's nothing but liars. Never a straight answer. We know this. However, when NASA says, oh, the sky's blue, it's blue. Not because NASA said so, but because it is. And a lot of times liars will speak the truth. Good liars will. I often describe the mass media as a liar. We know it's a liar. But you can't just turn it off because it's a liar. It's a good liar. It tells you the truth 98% of the time to gain your trust. And it lies strategically. So it pays to pay attention. Cunify says, flat earth makes me sick at the moment. Adam Cook says, chemtrailing, just cause big blah. Well, if it's geoengineering, this is where they actually, this is why I dislike the whole conversation where it's going, is that it gets, and I look at the big chemtrail believers on X, it's huge. Chemtrail belief is to the right what climate change is to the left. And I see these big channels with hundreds of thousands of followers every day. And they're saying, oh, yeah, climate change is real, but it's being caused by chemtrails and geoengineering. And it's just such a strange claim. Like, oh, I agree with Greta, but it's not because of the free market. It's because of a secret government program. Like, if your statement begins with "I agree with Greta," "I agree with Al Gore," then you're in the wrong. Like, I will never say, "Oh, I agree with Bill Gates. I agree with Al Gore," but this is the cause because you've accepted a premise. And I reject the premise of anthropogenic climate change. And if you're saying you believe in chemtrails, aren't you also admitting that you believe man has the power to change the weather? That's your underlying assumption. The underlying assumption to chemtrail belief is man altering the climate. Is that not true? I mean, are you not just saying Greta's right, but she's wrong on the cause? Armin Rees says, going back a bit on the subject, before books would be burned to avoid spreading harmful ideas. Now book readers burn themselves and try to spread harmful ideas. Interesting take on Maxwell Ozrello. Burning himself to spread the ideas. Kinnevy says, why would the government spray their own heads? Why would pilots spray their own families? That logic I don't follow. Great, exactly. That is a valid question, and the answers that I've heard stem from range from things like they live somewhere else, or they don't care because they're cold, they're reptilians. I'd like to know, what are the cumulative effects? They've been doing this for what, 25 years? People have been saying. Although people say, I remember, I've had this a few times. They've come to me and they said, well, you don't remember because you weren't alive back when the skies were blue and the sun was yellow and there weren't any trails. And I'm like, look, are you 90? Because these things have been around a lot longer than you. Thank you, Multi C0 Dagger. IPS appreciates the support. All support now goes to the IPS Legal Fund. I am suing Mind Control Central. That's how you know I'm not a shill. I am suing Mind Control Central, Google, LLC, YouTube. I'm suing them for aiding and abetting a cyberstalker, but also for helping him to commit fraud and defamation, but also for censoring my channel. And censorship is a word thrown around very flippantly these days. And the fact of it is, censorship is only truly censorship if the government's involved. Private companies can do what private companies want to do. And in our case, we have been censored by a government operative using government resources as part of a government psychological operation. And this has been well documented, and it's the basis for my lawsuit. So all support right now is going into IPS Legal. IPS Legal is going to be covering mostly my time, and my time right now is being spent on trying to find an attorney. I have 2 more months, and I'm thinking I could certainly use the help with an attorney as far as getting subpoenas sent, motions sent, getting Goldfinch served, and I also want to really lean on the power of this Superior Court in California to bring about criminal prosecution of both the YouTube attorney involved and Goldfinch. So if you want to support the IPS Legal, I'm putting a link in the chat. This will be resolved this year. The case management hearing was inexplicably bumped from May 13th to July 22nd, but I'm using that time to get an attorney. I wrote a letter up with the help of ChatGPT, and I've reached out to several local attorneys. I'm looking for someone to assist me on a pro bono basis, and I think that someone's going to bite when they see how collectible it is, that I've done the legwork, and that it's already on the docket. But I do need that I could use a paralegal, to be honest, but I want to get some attorney who could possibly, again, do what I don't have time to do. I can certainly do this on my own, I'm sure, but I don't have the time and the resources to focus on it like I should. If I'm just going to make that my main goal here, but I don't want to sidetrack this. My goal isn't some pot of gold. It's not some big win for its own sake. Our goal is victory over Google and YouTube, shaming them, humiliating them in public. That's what we want to do. And that's what will be the outcome of this. And I feel like all of the suppression of this channel from 2018 to, we'll say, 2023, all of that will be compensated for once the full story is blasted onto the interwebs. Adam Cook says, in Lincoln, England, I grew up surrounded by RAF bases. Out of 18 households near RAF Waddington, 11 households had cases of cancer and leukemia. Interesting. Linda Curtis says, chemtrail belief causes wasting disease. Did you catch my article yesterday about nocebo effect? Let's go ahead and revisit this. Conspiracy theories, psychosomatics, and the nocebo effect. This is the opposite of the placebo, in which negative outcomes occur due to a belief. And what I suggested here is that if the nocebo effect and if psychosomatics are a factor, then who's causing the harm? Ironically, in a mind war, it's the spreaders of the phobias that are creating the fear, which causes the negative effects. So one could argue that conspiracy theorists cause the vax damage, that chemtrail alarmists are causing a yet to be diagnosed condition of chemtrail lung, that truthers are super spreaders of fear and they're doing Big Brother's dirty work. So yes, I think there is something to this. Okay, continuing. News spellcast. This is something we talk about quite a lot, and I think it's a worthwhile subject. We can't really separate the esoteric, the occult, the pagan from the secular, from the mainstream, because it's right there in our faces. Where do media and magic intersect? Synchronicity is inseparable from the creative process, which is inherently a search for meaningful constructs or arrangements. In my experience, the creative process is a conduit for synchronistic occurrences. It's about choices, decisions, and the deliberate intent to change reality to match an internal concept by externalizing it, by realizing it. It begins with the imagination, the place where we create blueprints for the future. To the extent that life is a process of intentional arrangement according to one's specifications or planning, life can be defined as a, quote, magical process. Aleister Crowley defined magic as, quote, the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with the will. So at a fundamental level, we co-create our experiences by the choices we make and those we opt out of. Our imaginations are assailed at all times with spectacular distractions, horrifying possibilities, and the mundane actions of day-to-day existence. Our hyper-mediated world is overflowing with emotionally charged messaging competing for our intentions, hijacking our internal experiences. Doom scrolling can easily replace introspection. Insta TikTok booking can replace meaningful reflection. But political propaganda aside, the esoteric, ritualistic, ceremonial, and magical symbolism accompanying most of the major psyop operations suggests that we're being influenced at another level, aside from the emotional, psychological, and cognitive realms. The basis for media mind control is control over the choices we make, without us being aware of how our choices are steered. Unlike mere political propaganda with a clear purpose, occult messaging tends to go unnoticed. It bypasses the psychic censor. One could conclude that we are ruled by ancient wizardry, and that the wizards of today are simply more advanced technologically than their predecessors. The term wizard in this context, pertains to those in possession of the most advanced tech and knowledge. But we must be mindful of the trap of assuming that because something is indistinguishable from magic, it must be magic. We don't fall for this at stage magic shows, and we shouldn't fall for it with the magic show on the black box. Now, synchronicity is a personally perceived meaningful message conveyed via coincidental timing and being in the right place to make the connection. And my research on ceremonial magic suggests that synchronicity is what successful magical effects look like. The sufficiently concentrated will is directed with intent into a ritual constructed around symbolic meanings that reiterate the intent of the wizard. So, rituals are where meaning is encoded with the intent of causing future events to lead to a desired outcome. So, news bending, news manipulation may be the ritual part of what we experience as their bent reality. The black cube altar, the television screen, is where the spell is cast in a microcosmic form, representative of a possibility, a future projected onto the viewer's imagination in visual and audio. So perhaps the public is unwittingly part of a mass magical work in progress. News, NEWS, North, East, West, South, they broadcast to the four directions, as with all witchcraft rites, which invoke the four directions, seasons, and elements with each spell. Earth, wind, fire, water broadcasts are spellcasts. Media are casting spells in a literal sense if we are to judge by the nomenclature, symbolism, and blatant pagan pageantry behind most major entertainment events, such as Super Bowl halftime shows, the esoteric subtexts in movies and video games, which are a separate layer of messaging from predictive programming. Another crucial point: in all magical rituals, the main component is what satanic high priest Anton LaVey called the quote, suspension of disbelief. What Peter Carroll of the Illuminati of Thanateros said was the quote, psychic censor. In other words, for magic to work, to channel one's will into it, one has to believe in it, at least for the duration of the spell. LaVey emphasized the need for emotional engagement with music and visuals, even encouraged a little alcohol for the chalice as a disinhibitor. So magical rituals suppress the control of the conscious mind over the subconscious. It opens the gates to the underworld. So whether you believe in it or not, the components of magical ritual are in play in what appears to be innocuous entertainment on the ubiquitous screen, the black box. But this black box interacts with our imaginations, and it bypasses our psychic sensors. So the news is primarily mind control, analogous to many holy books, which create closed systems that have a message for the conscious mind, one for the subconscious, one for the initiates, one for the profane, one exoteric, and one esoteric. We cannot fully understand media if we separate the mundane aspects from its other cryptic, occult, and magical purposes. I put this article on my blog there, just pointing out here that there's a obvious political intention behind predictive programming and the mind control, but this is a surface level interpretation of it. But there's a deeper level which we touch upon, we often see examples of it, and I'm trying to determine what's the meaning behind it. And I've come to the conclusion that, in a very literal sense, news agencies are broadcasting what you could consider to be spells. That they are writing reality, bending reality, and they're influencing us through our subconscious. And it is through working with the subconscious that one does magic according to magical theory. So it doesn't matter if you believe in magic or not. I'm not saying I do, but I'm saying I understand the theory behind it. And according to the prevailing magical theories of the day, and I'm looking at the sources, Peter Carroll, Anton LaVey, Aleister Crowley, if we go from these sources, then yeah, you could argue that we are indeed participants in a collective mass magical working. That mass media is a group right. which explains why they need you as a matrix battery paying attention. Because when you're paying attention, according to magical theory, thoughts are things. Your intention, focused, does something. That there is feedback from the universe itself. And this is a cycle of intention and feedback that you would refer to as magic. But what we are also looking at here is the idea that we are, quote, magical beings, but our magic is hijacked by the cult of the all-seeing eye, which has a monopoly on worldview creation. And look, these are the same individuals, the same entities, it's the same structure that believes in taxing you for every breath you take. You think they wouldn't find some way to tap into your soul? All right, continuing. Let me see if I've missed anything in your comments. Duas Impera says, this is actually the main reason I started questioning my own predilections and believing conspiracy theories. The fear it causes, the fear we can't do much about it in the face of Sheepleville. You know what? They probably create that on purpose. They want to create the impression that this is so big, you can't do anything about it, so you have to wake everybody up. And then what? Follow the leader. And where's your leader? Oh, that's the guy running up the hill on January 6th. That's your representative. And then you take the fall along with him. It's all controlled opposition. Find me a conspiracy theory that's not controlled opposition, please. I'm looking for one. As far as I'm concerned, mainstream media is nothing but conspiracy theories. Alt media, alternative conspiracy theories. Belief systems versus belief systems. I don't see any platforming of real skepticism, and that's where we step in. And the reason why we have to go hard against all of the truth or orthodoxies is to create a schism. We need to break away from believers and only group up with non-believers. Now, if you're a non-believer on everything but chemtrails, are we going to say you can't sit with us? No. But we're going to let you know that there's no chemtrails off-world stage. We'll debate it. But I don't want to open up a big tent to people who are reflexively following bad leadership. We don't need followers. We don't need believers. We need seekers. And to be completely fair, what Jake Gibson has pro-offered as a debate subject here is that Las Vegas doesn't have the conditions conducive to persistent, quote, contrails. So that's a perfect place, ground zero for this conversation. Duas Impera says, exactly, we can't wake everybody up, but we can wake ourselves up from the nightmarish responsibility of waking everybody up. Yeah, no, the way I look at it is the world stage is a closed system, and they exclude a lot of stuff that would let you know how fake it is. Within the closed system, you have Normieville and Trutherville and Woketown. Trutherville and Woketown are not awake. They're experiencing a nightmare version, so they get active, they get agitated, they run to the streets. That's all by design. So you go from blissful sleep to Matrix warrior in a living nightmare, where you're scared of 5G towers, and you're afraid of fill in the blank. There's 50 things you're afraid of now. The instant you go woke, now you're afraid of America and Americans. The instant you go truther, now you're afraid of deep states and Clintons, and you're filled up with all kinds of scary things. Like, oh, I live in a world where Democrats eat babies. It sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like delusions. And it's packaged as, now you're awake. No, it's a false awakening, and you have Demon Lord Alex Jones in Jonestown serving nightmare pills, dragging you into hell. It's all fake. The truth does not exist in the world stage construct. It's a false model. We don't have the entirety of it. We have known unknowns, and that's where we're focused. Linda Curtis says, only people that secretly think they're blank would try to wake people up, planting seeds. Yeah, that's another thing too. Proselytizing. It's, you're selling people on a worldview with a bad ending. Like, imagine knocking on doors like a Jehovah's Witness. Hey, did you know we're in the end times? And that Most of the politicians are pedovores, Satanists, and blood drinkers, but that Donald Trump was appointed by JFK and Jesus to save us, and there's going to be a great awakening, and the Pleiadians are going to come down, interacting with Space Force after we've killed all the bad guys at Guantanamo, and we're going to see the execution of all the bad guys on TV carried out by the National Guard. But after that, Nasara and Jasara kicks in, and you won't have to pay your bills anymore. You'll have access to age regression, med beds, and we will live a golden age under Donald Trump, who's king of the world. How long until they slam the door in your face? Like, proselytizing a doomsday cult only solidifies the faith in the believers, because they're like, yeah, the world's going to reject you. That's evidence that you're doing the right thing. It's a fascinating thing. The evangelicals do it too. They take resistance and persecution as indicators of progress. Imagine selling a product, and the less people that want it, the harder you try to push it and sell it, because you think it's a selling. It's mind bending. It's gaslighting. Okay, let's continue here. Going through your comments. 777 says, so many pills, so many colors, got to eat them all. Well, here's the big secret. They all have the same manufacturer. Whether you're getting the goop from Gwyneth Paltrow, super male vitality from Alex Jones, same manufacturer, different label. Red pill, blue pill, same manufacturer, different candy coating. Red pills are bitter, blue pills are sweet. But if you chew them down to the core, what they ultimately sell you are black pills. And so the black pill is the idea that we can't do anything about it, we're doomed. So the blue pillars believe in the black pill philosophy, but they're drugged into apathy. The red pillars believe in it, but they think they can fight it. The truth of it is, even the black pill is fake. The truth is, the white pill would be the way if you wanted to do it with pills, to take the pill analogy. Because the white pills are basically, hey, these things are fake, nothing to worry about. Bowl cut shooters fake, nukes fake, chemtrails fake. These are white pills. Paradoxically, people get mad if you give them white pills. Hey, do you know that nobody died on 9/11? They get mad. You give them a black pill. Hey, you know that we're all going to die because a planet-killing asteroid's going to be here? Science told me. They're like, yeah, well, it's probably God finally just had enough of us. It's the default. Kinefy says, I don't buy into that. Yeah, I agree with that. The pedivore stuff is all a psyop. And it's also a mistake to imagine that you can scapegoat a small segment of the population for all of mankind's problems. It's like, go to your local prison and tell me how many of the worst people in there are elite. Is your prison full of celebrities and rich, influential politicians who are doing these bad things? No, it's just normie, poor people, just really lost souls. The idea that there's some kind of like way you could just get rid of all the evil at once is very attractive. You know, good guys winning, it's an attractive sale, but it doesn't work that way. But I don't believe in pills. Here's why. If you're taking pills, you've accepted a dynamic of patient to doctor or priest to follower. And if someone has to give it to you in bites, then you're not the arbiter of what you believe. You're waiting for someone else to tell you what to believe or not to believe. And I'm not telling people what not to believe. I'm providing reasons for moving away from the habit of accepting beliefs and moving into knowledge. This is the age of information. We need higher standards. I believe blank, but I don't know. Well, why don't you? Google it. Can't tell me it's not known. All right, this is a quote. We talked earlier about Francis Ford Coppola's movie Megapolis, and he says the script has an element of aging Soviet satellites falling out of orbit to the Earth. I had that bookmarked here. Interesting, considering this movie used to have, or in its original script had 9/11 predictive programming. It was delayed because of it, and now it's coming out, and it has something from Russia falling from space. That has to mean something. Mike Lindell had a freak out. Nothing new here. Might be.
I'm the American dream.
Okay, yeah, let's listen to this. He's got a great story. Crackhead to CEO.
I'm the American dream on steroids. I was an ex-crack addict and found Jesus Christ. You need help. This kid needs prayer. We need to pray for him. We need to pray for him. We need to pray
I love it. Keep booing.
for him. We need to pray for
Boo all you want. Boo all you want. It's okay. You're spending all your money because you've been conned by Donald Trump. I'm sorry.
And he doesn't do that.
Who won Wisconsin, though? Who won Wisconsin?
Okay, sounds like WWE. Pillow guy, always entertaining. I saw that he was freaking out. I had to check it out. In other news recently, there's zombie deer disease in 33 states, and truthers are drinking deer blood because they believe it's a nootropic. It makes you smarter, but you got to cover a nicotine patch with it. It's nutrient dense, and it'll also save your digestive system energy, whatever that means. So we got the deer virus, which may be something from Leave the World Behind, where the deer are warning people that something crazy is going to come. So that's a new development. It's the newest health fad among truthers. Speaking of Mick West is a conundrum because he spends all day long debunking UFOs, but he believes in fake space. But some of the work he does is really interesting because he does follow a logical format. And I'd be interested to see where we could find the breaking point with him. Like, he's got to know that he's a mind controller. There's no way this guy's unaware. You know, it's like it's just the cognitive tools, the skill set you would need to deconstruct ufology would make you a non-believer in a lot of stuff that he's obviously a believer in. But we have a video clip here of a UFO flying through the clouds.
Normal frame rate. Stop me when you see it.
What was that?
There we go.
Pause that thing. What is that?
So these individuals are totally mystified by this thing going through the clouds on this clip. Now, what Mick West explains is that after puzzling over this object, what could it possibly be? He points out this is a poplar seed drifting in front of the camera. But they started off by eliminating birds, insects, and drones. So they eliminated the most likely and ruled in something that doesn't even exist. And this is a fascinating, I call it non sequitur. It's very analogous to how Bigfoot believers react. Like, let's say you're camping with a Bigfoot believer and you hear something in the woods. Multiple choice question, what did you hear? A raccoon, B, a deer, C, Bigfoot. Now, the Bigfoot believer is going to say, I heard Bigfoot. Every Bigfoot believer will have heard Bigfoot. But the answer is bad question. C does not belong in the realm of possibility here. You have a circle, we'll call it the realm of possibility, list all the things in the woods. Bigfoot's not one of them. Tyrannosaurus Rex isn't one of them. So if somebody says, well, it might be this, well, I'm sorry, but you cannot introduce something that doesn't exist as though it has equal weight as these other options. It's non sequitur. And it's the same with UFOs. You can't even rule it in. And I would even, this is where he contradicts himself. Space station sightings, satellite sightings. You cannot even rule into the realm of possibility that you saw a satellite at night or that you saw the ISS. I'm sorry, your argument is the same as saying you heard Bigfoot. It might have been Bigfoot. It might have been no, sorry. There's a lot of problems with that, and most people don't know. For example, satellites in low Earth orbit would not be visible at night because they would be in the umbra of the Earth's shadow, and they wouldn't be able to reflect the sun. They're too low. So you wouldn't see them anyway. 2, they don't have lights. So you'd have to first rule out planes. You'd have to first rule out anything that we know to exist before you posit something extraordinary. And people are conditioned to believe that satellites are not extraordinary, but orbiting satellites, yeah, it's an extraordinary claim. And this fuzzy logic that gets people to believe in UFOs could be solved. It could be debunked, but they want us like this. See, they want us to say, I don't know. My mind's blown. It's on the screen. They don't want the types of skeptics that would call into question the basic premise. But Mick West is like an approved skeptic. He's allowed to ask certain questions, but he can't even apply his own level of skepticism to some of his own beliefs. All right, let's move on here. Yes, Lieutenant Weinberg. Mike Lindell is the face of the Cyber Symposium to overturn the election. I saw his books at Hobby Lobby. There's like a 6-foot tall stack of books, and it had his face on it. And it's one of these hologram. It's like one of these images are great because you look at Mike Lindell's face on his book, and he looks like a crackhead, and his tie is like half untied. But then you rotate the book a little bit. Actually, I have a picture of it here. And so in one picture, he looks like he's about to mug you. He looks like he's high on crack. His hair's messed up. His face is kind of red. But then you angle the book a little bit, and then he's smiling. So you got the two faces of Mike Lindell. Crackhead to CEO. What are the odds? Well, that might be a false question, crackhead or CEO. Maybe it's both. Many QAnoners believe he's JFK Jr. in a mask. But is there anybody that they wouldn't believe to be a JFK Jr. in a mask? Vivek Ramaswamy was actually posited by some, floated this around. They're like, oh yeah, maybe he's going to be Trump's VP because he's JFK Jr. in a mask. It's just so ridiculous. I'd like to say that maybe this whole Q thing will end once this election's over, but I'm sorry, but it's going to probably be a religion that's going to continue on almost indefinitely. Now, this is interesting. Stu Peters said, okay, but when do we get to kill them all, though? And he's talking about probably Jews or Democrats. And he's still on Twitter. I merely offered a helpful suggestion that someone try self-immolation if they want to die for their cause. And I was banned in a matter of minutes. So how is Stu Peters able to advocate mass violence for political purposes and stay on Twitter? And I merely offer someone a suggestion and I get banned for 12 hours. That's how you know that he's an agent provocateur. That's how you know I'm real. I want to say thanks for all of the comments. Ted Stryker says Hitler stash. Yes, Lindell does have a Hitler stash, and his hair kind of flops around like Hitler, probably by design. That's the level of programming. And the fact that you notice these things means you're paying attention. They work with archetypes. They work with subtle forms of manipulation, and they're certainly not above subliminals. Don't think they're not using subliminal marketing at every turn. That's what predictive programming is. And they create these associations by design so that you make these connections subconsciously. And it's meant to obviously make them unattractive to the left. Linda Curtis says, stupiders, LOL. Oh yeah, Stu Peters' followers. I call them the stupiders. But he's consistently out there. I watch him for one reason. I watch Stu Peters because he's an obvious controlled opposition shill. And you need to know, if you want to be informed, you need to know what the controlled opposition are throwing out there. Just like you need to know what the mainstream is putting out there. Because they're two wings, same ugly bird. This is Auto Hoaxer GTFO. Thanks, chat. Thanks, callers. We'll be back same time tomorrow.